our next and final session of the day, we're delighted to be returning to the Nieuwe Institute for the Global Game Remapping Collaborations and Gaming as a Tool for Collaboration. So I'm going to hand over to Francien van Westrenen, who is Head of Agency for Architecture, Design and Digital Culture at Nieuwe Institute, and she will introduce and chair the group, who will some be on stage, some on video, and so on. Yeah, so Francien, thank you.
Well, it has been quite a treat, I must say, to sit in the audience and to listen to all the speakers and to feel you behind us thinking along. I think that's really something that you can feel in an audience when there's so much attention to actually what is happening here and what has been said. So I hope you will stay attentive for another 45 minutes. We will dive deeper into what actually the global game is, because Eric, of course, introduced that idea to you, but he did not explain what it will be, and he left that to me actually to do that together with you and together with speakers. Ekim, Mark Stoop and Jaime Snyder will indeed appear on screen or in a chair. But maybe a brief recap, because it is already some time ago since Eric told you what might be a bit different to this biennial compared to the others. Namely, that there is an institute that is a curator this time, or an artistic director. And it also means that there comes an institute with it. And with an institute, there is multiple perspectives, ideas. There's a research department, there's collection. We think of heritage. There's, of course, the agency department that I'm heading, which is always looking for the connections that we can make for the design field in the Netherlands and in the field abroad. So I think this is also what steered our idea to not propose a theme, but to propose a process, which is slightly different from saying, hey, we propose this and it will lead to this kind of fantastic exhibition. No, we say we start a process and we believe it will work, but in the end we are completely dependent, and of course a biennial is always dependent on all the contributions, but especially in the process that we will propose, we are totally dependent on what you, well, maybe not you literally, but actually what the participants will bring. And I think one of the key things is that actually the biennial has started right now. So it's not, we don't have to wait till the 1st of June. It is actually already going on, with you sitting here with the game being presented and launched in a few weeks, at least in the format. Yeah, I leave it with this because otherwise I will go out of time. And I will introduce Mark. Mark will appear somehow. Hey, there he is. Wow, that's fantastic. That worked. Let me first introduce him. Mark Stoop has a military background. He developed several war games. And in 2014, he worked for the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs and set up scenarios after supporting the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. I worked at that time in The Hague, and the whole city felt like a prison while it was all about openness. So that was a real interesting contrast. We invited Mark, especially also because he is involved in all kinds of scenario thinking and also using, I think, some game thinking and simulation games to do that. Mark, hello. Can you see me actually or not? Can you only hear me?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I see you.
Oh, fantastic. That's nice. And I had to think back of our first conversation in the cafe of the Nieuwe Institute, where we spoke together with Eric. And I remember that you were almost sitting the whole hour on the edge of your seat, and afterwards we spoke for another hour in the exhibition. And you were getting more enthusiastic with the minute. That is something that I recall very vividly. And I thought maybe that's a good point to start. So where did your enthusiasm came from when we expressed what we were actually hoping to do with the London Design Biennale, namely introduce a game as a means of collaboration? Can you reflect a little bit on that? if you
Yeah, why I was so enthusiastic was mainly because I saw things coming back from the big projects we've done in the past. In 2014 for the Nuclear Security Summit, but also a lot for the European presidency of the Netherlands, where we did some high-level ministerial meetings. And also in that world, in the diplomatic world at that stage, it wasn't normal to do gaming. Even the term was not allowed to use in the beginning because, of course, heads of state, they don't play games. But, I mean, I come from a military background. We do a lot of war games in that field already for a long time, which has been very valuable. And I think this has developed into, in other fields, a more acceptance of how to use gaming. This is what some people call serious gaming or the simulation and crisis gaming. And I think that when I see the opportunities that are now there for the Biennale, that's why I was so enthusiastic, because I saw the same discussion coming back in 2014 and in 2016 for the presidency, is that if you bring something like gaming and the experience of what it can be, what it can produce into a more cultural and artistic world, that's where I see the opportunities arising. That's where I see the unique atmosphere that can lead to something totally new. When we did this for the first time for the Nuclear Security Summit on that level, it has never been done before for heads of state, I always say. And it was pretty scary in the beginning. But in the end, everybody they loved it. And it was because you bring something new to the table. A way of communication, a new discovery, and there was a lot of protocol in the Nuclear Security Summit. But when the first moment arose, when Prime Minister Rutte asked the first question to the heads of state concerning this specific game, everybody jumped on it, and literally the heads of state, they turned around in their chairs, and all the delegation jumped on their heads of state to discuss the difficult questions. Yeah. And we brought something back to the diplomatic table that has never been done before. And I see the opportunities now for the Biennale to bring something unique and a moment in time where we need discussions, collaborations, understanding, different perspectives. And then when you explain to me the reference to the global game of Buckminster Fuller, that's when I really started to get enthusiastic. Because I see the reference and I see the difficulties of the end of the 1960s, and I see the difficulties now. That's where I think there's still new ground to discover ourselves, and yeah, that's where my enthusiasm came from.
Yeah. Well, I think you've answered all my questions already. It's interesting that you would with one question and one answer. But no, maybe one extra question. I think at the subtitle, we have the global game, and then the subtitle is remapping collaborations. I think this is also something you touched upon very briefly, but can you elaborate maybe a bit more? So what is crucial, why we need to collaborate in this time? Because I think you also function and work in different fields than only the design field. So can you maybe say a little bit on that note from your perspective?
Well, I mean, in our company supports basically all topics, from governments working on difficult defense topics until even big companies that work for baby food, and everything in between. We do a lot also for the energy transition. We work on climate change, antibiotic resistance. We've done hybrid warfare, also something that is related to the current crisis in the world. And every time I see the same thing. Sometimes sometimes tough topics are stuck. They kind of like resolve around what is already done, and then something new needs to be brought in. And that's where I see that changing of perspective. That's where I see new relationships. And when we first started working in ourselves as a team, I don't have a cultural or an artistic background, but we bring something different to your table.
Yeah.
And same as when we started working with Ekim on, let's say, really putting the interactions together. That's where you see where you trigger each other, where you come with unexpected ideas, and that's where innovations and new designs come from, from my perspective. Yeah. And that's where I see, at least, the opportunities for the design world to do exactly what Fuller has been doing in the late 60s, bringing new thoughts to a world that was a little bit stuck maybe at that stage already. And so, yeah, it's an honor actually to be there again at that stage and see where can we take it from here.
Yeah.
And it's an unknown journey.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I wanted to say in my introduction that I think I heard somebody say just to Vicky, it's quite courageous actually to ask the New Institute as a curator. And I, of course, maybe it was also a bit of a joke, but I think I think the thing that we proposed asks something of the biennial, and it will ask something of the participants, because collaborations, as we all know, are also taking time. They cost time. You have to really be curious. I think the previous speaker, the curiousness and the openness towards somebody else, to place yourself in the shoes of somebody else, I think is really important, and that takes time and sometimes also hard to do. Mark, thank you. We will go further with Ekim to learn a bit more how the game actually is taking form. So it's very hard, but it's your key. So Ekim, please come to the stage. Ekim is an architect and an urbanist, and she has a PhD in very good. Thanks a lot. PhD on gaming as a method for urban design, and in 2008 you founded Play the City, and it's an Amsterdam and Istanbul-based city consultancy firm that helps governments and market parties effectively collaborate with stakeholders. And so the method that you have developed has been applied in cities as Amsterdam, Dublin, Shenzhen, Tirana, where the Feyenoord finale is played this evening. I, as a Rotterdammer, is something. Cape Town, there are not much football fans here. Cape Town and Brussels. So very welcome. We are totally pleased to work with you. And I think I'd like to ask you the same question as with Mark, because I think the same happened with you. I encountered you and Eric already talking on what the idea of the game was, and there was this kind of, there was a very vivid conversation going on what that could be. Mm-hmm. So indeed, my first question is also to you. So when Eric explained to you about what the global game is, or what it could be, or what he or we envisioned it to be, so what was your response to that?
Yeah, I think I was getting excited. To be honest, when it's Play the City, we are hardly part of biennales. We are working with real communities, and we are working with cities, with real stakeholders to help them make collective, collaborative plans. So, and I'm actually even against the idea of being, part of the biennale as a game, because it's not where your players are. You want to be with your players. But the way I think Eric was asking to us was, hey, can you make a game where your players are curators, where your players are designers, makers, and then the game can help them, even go beyond of where they are and what they can do, collaborate. Yeah. That was, I think that, and when we were talking, when I was explaining what we were doing at Play the City, and we were seeing really the kind of like in a systemic thinking, the parallels of, okay, well, you enter the game as an individual, but then you start making your visions and positions clear, and then you start hearing who could be your allies, where are the conflicts, and how do these work? And we were already seeing, oh, wow, it can really work. And, in the Biennale, normally we always enter individually, we end up individually as well. Maybe this time, a game can help designers and curators start collaborating towards the Biennale. The Biennale, as you said, can begin as the game begins, and the curators can start knowing each other, hearing from each other and their work already, and maybe unexpected collaborations can finally, I mean, there are collaborations happening even without the game for the biennales, but I think, well, this can really accelerate. That, I mean, there's not a scientific, let's say, backup of what I am saying, but I really assume that the game can really make a better biennale.
Well, maybe there's not a scientific backup, although you have written a beautiful PhD, but there is, of course, your experience with Play the City. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can just briefly show us a few of the images and explain what we see and what it is that you do, because then we also understand better, I think, how you designed the global game.
Yeah, in the world of urban planning, we know how to make beautiful city designs and plans, right? I think what we are learning in this century is how do we make plans that are inclusive, that are open, that are adaptive, that we can actually collaboratively make. And the question there is, in the existence of multiple stakeholders, you know, experts, non-experts, multiple disciplines, how do you make holistic, meaningful plans all together? I think that's our challenge. I mean, I think that's also the challenge of all the biennales. I think it's in that sense, it's the similar thing. Maybe I could explain it with like a game that we made in Metropoolregio Amsterdam, where local politicians come together to discuss their investments, where in the existence of experts, and the game can help, you know, mayors to come together to make decisions, but the game can also help residents come and join the conversation about urban planning. So that's the fact that it makes intangible things tangible, that you can touch the information, you can touch the data and start, you know, looking at it and making it together, decide what are our shared values and how to build on that, how to make real plans. I think, and we have games obviously about migration, in this case in Prague being played. Affordable housing, climate adaptation, very difficult. Well, I think that's also when the games are relevant. When you have a complex enough question and multiple players that you cannot solve with 1 or 3 people, that then starts being effective. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we have a complex question here. That's namely the biennial, and actually how to make that into something that everybody loves to come to London for. So what did you do? How did you come from this to the design of the global game?
Yeah, maybe I can start showing this. Yeah. So, I mean, I think what we see here is a little bit the game diagram. It's not the game, but the game diagram. So what we see, I think, in the question of the Biennale is we have country curators, we have designers coming from all over the world. And working towards the, let's say, 1st June 2023. But then the game is something that can work actually as a process game. What you were also saying, like basically supporting the alternative process where the collaborations or getting to know each other can start already during the game. So I think the game space is proposing here it's something that is where content is being shared. So, but also that's also a social space. So what you see is maybe a little bit of architect in me kind of designing this diagram, that you see various rooms for designers, where they can put their content on, where they can start meeting with each other. If they want, they can be totally private. If or they can be public. They can just go on public stage or invite other, philosophers who are talking about collaboration, or they can go to the showroom and start interacting with the audience. So that's also the idea or the question that we are asking: can we actually involve also the audience in the game? Yeah. How they can be part of it. So there's the audience makers, the Biennale itself, and how do you make the interactions through them possible? Yeah.
So this is actually
a little bit of a mock-up of the Biennale being built, let's say.
Yeah, that's maybe a good comparison. And then?
Yeah, and then we started also investigating, I think, last weeks to see what the game can look like. So it is, as we speak, the game rules are being designed and tested, but I can maybe show a little bit of the taste of it, how it can look like. So. Obviously, we have let's say, an overview of participants, and the world Dimexio map shows you. I think these are the participants from the former years. So I don't think these are the current years of 2023, but these are, let's say, a space where you can, let's say, discover the content of the various designers and their entries. And as you were seeing earlier, you also have this, I think, the coincidentality in the game. So when you're in the game, you can bump into let's say, other designers who are in the game. If you're in, let's say, at the right time in the right game space, maybe you can start meeting each other already. But I think from here, this is the kind of navigation part. You can start entering, let's say, the game rooms, participant rooms.
Yeah, because I think this is central. So, yeah, I think this is so in the first mock-up that you showed, you saw all the drawings of the different rooms, and actually we are now in such a room.
Like it's one, it could be one of these rooms, one of the design rooms, let's say. And this is again content taken from the last Biennale. I think Chile, the winner of the public winner of the last Biennale. So what we see is, well, these are also the what you see the tags in on the top part. They are what we assume could be the themes, but that will be actually based on the entries that are coming in and that we can suggest. And then there are places that I think, well, interactions such as, well, what you have also in dating apps, I suppose, that if you like a designer, or if you're interested in a designer and you hear that designer is also interested in you, you can start seeing, well, maybe there's a basis for meeting and start, I think the idea of the game is not to become the matchmaker, let's say, but let these things self-organize. So as people, as designers are within the game, they will start exploring each other's works. They can invite participants to their room. So there are these buttons now at the moment. We are kind of designing.
Yeah, so every designer, also just to take the public with us, the audience with us, every designer makes its own room, or a curator or a country, or actually every participant, let's call them participants, make your own room. And with the text that you saw in the above, you also mention what kind of interest you have, or where you like to work on, or where you're actually working on. And I think that is then the basis of actually meeting each other. So it's also a social platform in that sense. So I think that might be also a bit different from maybe other biennials, that it is not only the London Design Biennale that is actually having all those conversations with the participants, but they are actually, there's a possibility that they all get to know each other along the way and in the process.
And with the final goal of building collaborations, of course. So the idea is that as you build collaborations, I mean, you can in your room obviously start organizing meetings, and these meetings are, I think at the moment, according to the rules, you can make as many days, as many designers and makers, investors, whoever is the kind of in the game possible. But at the moment that your conversation starts becoming a cooperation, there's a button that's called Formalize Your Collaboration that will then lead you to the artistic director. So together with the collaborators, you can fill in the form and you can explain about your collaboration. You can explain about your stakeholder or your partners and the form of collaboration you're working on. And the idea is then to kind of with that, let's say, formalized button, start another conversation where artistic director, LDB, and all your partners can start discussing what is the basis. I think it can be something practical, but it can be something also like, I don't know, the River Delta collaboration that, designers that look at the same question, maybe they were looking at these things individually, but they discovered, well, that could be something we work on this together, and then maybe make a pop-up or a new proposal for, I don't know, if I'm making it works a little bit more complex, but it can happen that all of a sudden designers can come up with a new idea or join their research, join their statement so that it becomes stronger. And
I want to say it's still in development. That is actually the actual design. So the images that you see now, as you saw, it's a mock-up of the mock-up of that we will present. So that also means that there will be rules written down, there will be some incentives also being given on the platform. There will be, of course, a description on how to actually enter this. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? This is important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that it's important that we are also discussing with the Nieuwe Instituut to publish a set of values, like like what do we see as urgent collaboration? What is a real collaboration, and where is the real meaningful collectivity and collaboration that we are looking for? I think that's really good, also for the game itself to be strong and be clear. And I think maybe these values can be discussed when we launch the game. Hey, these are the values. Let's have a conversation about this to really look into what we say when we say cooperation and collaboration. And I think it will be, we can really see if we take this as seriously as a process tool, then we can also see, well, let's I don't know, make mini summits within the game where there's a collaboration, the designers can explain how they're working on, see if they can work, or maybe the audience, looking at the works of the designers, if they, of course, if they allow it, they can come up with proposals and start making collaborations with the makers, or they can make collaborations among themselves and start making an informal biennale. I don't know. These are all these things that are possible. There's so many things possible if you allow such a process happening.
The unknown territories that we will either remapping the collaboration. But all within the framework of the biennial and, of course, the Somerset House, I think. And I think also with this, it's not for nothing that the quote of Bucky is here and is still speaking to us, I think. I will speak with it with Jaime Snyder in a minute. But I think it's also, it's not collaboration for the sake of the collaboration. There is also this aim of actually, and I think also it's the need, but also the awareness. The awareness that it is necessary to collaborate.
Yeah, but also learn from each other. I think in the Johar, I don't know if he's still in here, but it would be like just also bring people who have already really good ideas about how this works. Why do we have to collaborate on what exactly? And these things also be within the game. That we can, where we can meet. I was showing the public the stage where you can bring thinkers. We can learn all together towards the Biennale.
Well, thanks a lot. That's a good thing to end with. Thanks a lot. I think I show one image because we have this, but I will quote this. But I love this image because here you see kind of hands-on world gaming going on, and this is also a really interesting perspective on Buckminster Fuller, on this fantastic big world map and dimension map that is also coming back in the game design. And now we have Jaime Snyder. Yeah, there you are. Again in your beautiful garden. Good to see you again, Jaime. And welcome to this, the final session in the Chatham House of the London Design Biennial Summit. I will quickly introduce you to the audience so that they all know who you are. You are an educator, writer, and filmmaker, and also a singer-songwriter. You are the co-founder of the Buckminster Fuller Institute, and as his grandson, you also traveled with him, studied and worked until his passing in 1983. And we had a very nice conversation also to prepare a bit for this one. And I immediately like to dive into it because I think this quote, and it is not for nothing because indeed it was something that came into my mind. I think I remember Vicky also bringing it up. So I make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or disadvantage of anyone. And I think what is so remarkable of it that it could have well been said yesterday or today on this summit. So it still speaks to us, and I think, at least for me, what still speaks to me is that we are not working for 100% of humanity yet. There's still being a lot of ecological offense going around. So I was wondering, if you look at the world game back in the 60s, in relation to today's challenges and the possibilities, how do you look at that? What do you see when you look at the world game?
Well, I think it is first and foremost, it is a profound idea. When you have a vision to find how to make the world work for 100% of humanity without ecological offense, etc. you are in effect introducing a substance, you know, a powerful meme into our realities. And I think it still reverberates for many, many, many years. The idea, since when Bucky introduced it in the early 60s, of a game and making the world work. And, you know, I think Bucky, as a designer, Michael Benelli of the Sustainability Labs had mentioned, you know, Bucky's the one guy that has actually been focusing on the design of the whole planetary system as a whole, not as a bunch of parts. And Bucky's game, as he envisioned it, was a very powerful idea that while he was not able to actually get the funding for the computer that he thought would be able to put all of this data about the, Bucky called it the inventory of world resources, human trends and needs. You know, you can't actually solve these large problems without actually having all the variables introduced. You can't leave out variables and be effective in design. So I think Bucky, that thought has been with us and excites people to this day, even though really what Bucky was talking about, in a sense, beyond just this idea, was an actual design engineering problem, which is literally we have this tremendously complex global system, and how do we use computer capability? Bucky sensed that connection to be fundamental, but you know, the computer that Bucky was thinking he might purchase or whatever, get the funding for to build was, you know, tremendously rudimentary. But so what's striking and important in this moment is simply that we now, I'm sitting in front of my little laptop computer, which has tremendous sophistication. Well, you know, but that wasn't available at that point. So even though Bucky saw it clearly and he described it and how it would all work, it wasn't manifest. And, you know, I think today we are in the opposite situation. We now have this capability, but we are, you know, we're so sort of tending to be distracted by all the pieces of the puzzle. We're not really being very effective. And I think, you know, in dealing with the whole system, and I think Bucky felt that, I remember him talking about how a lot of problems that have been vexing to us, you know, are limited, you know, we're not able to solve them because we are looking at things with a kind of bias, you know, unconsciously. And that Bucky really felt that computer data, and today machine learning and the ability of computers to actually solve problems and say, you know what, it would actually work better, you know, than what all the best designers are thinking if we did it this way. And so, in any event, I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's, I think, where it started, and it's very much with us. I mentioned to Francine that a young associate of mine had done a thesis on finishing, you know, Buckminster Fuller's world game, Buckminster Fuller's unfinished computer game. And the fact is now we really can build it, but it's going to take tremendous sophistication and ultimately the motivation to do it, because we, you know, that's the challenge, and it, you know, we're going to really have to enroll some of these large, you know, capabilities so that all of us can have actual verified data at our hands in a uniform way that isn't corruptible by,
Whoever.
by various systems, that skew the information.
Yeah. Is this also because that was one of the things that I was curious of, what actually the gaming aspect, or why did he thought that the game would actually work in reaching this bigger goal? He could have also maybe thought of other things, but why the game? Can you say something about that?
Well, Bucky was sort of, he saw things sort of as a whole, in the whole system sort of way. I think, coming back to Mark's presentation, Bucky, I think, ultimately said, look, we're using this tremendous capability that we have, to playing war games, to be effective in making sure the world is kept in some kind of order. Bucky said, well, wait, we should be thinking also of a world game. Yeah. How do we actually solve the problem using the most advanced technology we have on this planet to figure out how do we build a world, how do we create a world that works for everyone and for all life on Earth? Yeah. And so that's, that's where we are.
Yeah. Maybe to round off, I was wondering, how did Bucky address the designers with this world game? What was his? Did he also challenge the architects and designers with it, or how do you?
Yeah.
Can you say something about?
Well, Bucky's challenged architects. There's a lot of footage and a lot of documentation. I mean, I think Bucky was challenging. Actually, he was made president of the International Union of Architects in 1963. And, so there was sort of like, it was up to him to set a tone for the subsequent year of this program that they had, and Bucky basically said, look, I'm challenging all of the designers and architectural students all over the world to basically to design, find out how we're going to increase, to be precise, how we're going to increase the efficiency of our global systems so that the resources and capabilities we have now can go from serving just 40% of humanity to 100% of humanity. And he was basically saying the only way you can do that is by increasing the efficiency of the systems. And so he was challenging the architects to come together. I think to some degree, as I mentioned to you yesterday, his vision assumed that it would be, we could just link up with architectural students all over the world, but of course, what we have today didn't exist then. So ultimately, it then moved to Bucky's headquarters at Southern Illinois University, where they then began this design science decade. And there's a number of publications about it. And again, it was really looking at gathering all this data, looking at all sorts of systems about how do we, in the next 10 years, increase, the capability of all, for all humanity to have what they need, basically. Yeah. And so, and that then, but it's still is an idea, as evidenced by our talking about it, that strikes all of us. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just saw I'm not sure if that was that event, an image of Bucky with a group of students, I imagine, all working on also. I think one of the things that you mentioned in our talk that actually this making visible of what is invisible was actually key and essential to the things that he actually foresaw and was working on within this world game, and also to see the world as a system functioning.
Yeah, and his map, I mean, I think one of the pictures I saw in your presentation, Bucky, because again, he didn't have the computers, one of the things he did in the last few years is that with one of his young associates, Medard Gable, they, who now does an Earth game, a Global Solutions Lab in New York in the summers, but Bucky had the idea, and they put together that to get a complete set of air navigation charts, very high sophisticated maps, literal maps, and he bought a complete set of the maps for the entire world, and they then literally created this map, and it was really quite, it really is quite striking when you see the Earth as one system. So it took approximately the size of a basketball court, and they actually did many world games for a number of years using this large map. So you can actually see, on the one hand, you can see your little town, but then you step back and you can see the whole system. And it became a very powerful, again, conceptual tool for thinking about and grasping the world as a whole system.
Yeah. And also us as all relational beings with the world and all the species around. Well, thanks a lot, Jamie. It was lovely to talk to you, but also very nice of you to be present in this summit as the final speaker of the day. Thanks a lot for your time, and also thanks to Mark and Ekim. And I'm closing this session. Oh, again. And I'm giving it back to Vicky. Thanks.